mercy, have mercy. Let 'em know my heart, my days are through. America, America, I gave you to you. Welcome in, everybody. Hope you guys are enjoying your Tuesday night. I am Mr. America, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon. That was the American anthem. Gotta give props where props are due, and that certainly is a song that I would recommend everyone take a little bit of time. Oh, apologize for that. That everyone go and check out, right? It's a beautiful message, and it's about standing up and giving it your all. Give it your all for America, because when we fail to give our all for America, when we fail to stand up against the wicked, the evil, the corruption, the tyranny, the government, we are not only just failing ourselves, but we're failing our history, we're failing liberty, we're failing freedom, we're failing it in such a magnificent way. Welcome in, everyone. And that is not magnificent in that context, obviously, is not a positive connotation, right? We all need to be striving and working hard to preserve not just our views and our values, but preserving this wonderful nation that we have, preserving unity, preserving the strength, and allow freedom to ring from the rooftops to the valleys, from sea to shining sea. We should be allowing this to continue to thrive and rejoice in the freedoms that we still have, and fight hard. Put your blood, sweat, and tears into protecting and regaining our freedoms back once again, right? We are certainly in an age and an era where these rights and freedoms and our liberties are just looked over, and we accept them because somebody says you shouldn't have this right, you shouldn't have this freedom. It's a national tragedy that you are a free person. And by you practicing your freedoms, your rights, and your liberties, in the same way that others have practiced their rights, their freedoms, and their liberties, when they practice theirs, people got hurt, and therefore you shouldn't be able to practice yours. And we all should be standing up and saying, nay, nay, not in my world, not in the country in which this was so many Americans, men, women, and children, fought and lost their lives to preserve. We must, in that pursuance, continue to fight in their honor, in their legacy that they gave us, right? Liberty is only a single generation away. Sorry, my internet's failing on me now. That's perfect. I'm so excited right now. Let me see if I can get all those links back up, because that was absolutely brutal. It was brutal. I'm telling you, it was brutal. All right. Hopefully I can get these back up, because I lost all of my articles. I lost every one of my articles for tonight's show. But nonetheless, of course, I was reviewing them prior to getting in on this. So while we work to get through this, we can get started tonight. There's a couple things I wanted to talk about. First off, I had some friendly fire coming after me. I had some friendlies coming after me. In a wonderful scope. Brought on by a beautiful, intelligent man, James R. Real Person Politics, here on Periscope. Recommend following him if you guys haven't already. He is a vocal Trump supporter. He is certainly, like I said, very intelligent, very wise, and is intuitive in many ways. I was in on one of his scopes last night and received quite a bit of flack and saying I don't care. I do not have Comcast. Comcast doesn't come out to my house. So they came after me and they said, look, you don't know about evil. You don't care about evil. You don't care about the atrocities in which the left has has stood so firmly on. And to that, right, I understand the evil atrocities of what the left does, what they have done in the past, what they're doing today, what they're planning for our future, and how they plan to remove our rights and freedoms. And that's certainly one of the topics we're going to be covering here in a little bit. But my entire point that was being made, and James was using the Constitution, so I had my ears perked up whenever anyone brings up the Constitution. But he's bringing up Article 5, or Article 1, Section 5, and Article 1, Section 9. And basically, Article 1, Section 5 is talking about how the houses, both houses, they are the rulers when it comes to how elections go. So using Article 1, Section 5, they're able to say, look, the elections that are going on in Florida, the election that went on in Georgia, the election that's going on, or that went on in Arizona, right? These are unjust, these are unruly, these are, the level of corruption in these events are certainly palpable. They are certainly, to an extent in which even the most basic misinformed person can look at that and go, something doesn't add up. 2 + 2 does not equal 17. When you're missing 80,000 votes and you manage to find them in 2 days after the elections are done, after the polls have closed, right? It certainly doesn't add up. So Article 1, Section 5 obviously is a good point in here, and I think that that's one that that should be discussed and should be brought up in the actual attack on our democracy, to use the quotes of the left, of the Democrats from the 2016 election, the actual violation of the integrity of our election process in our constitutional republic, as said by people who actually understand politics, who actually understand how the country is founded, the governmental structure of what we were supposed to be. In a lot of ways we still maintain. These are things that our Constitution was written to protect, and that obviously Article 1, Section 5 is one of those pieces that we can be using. But when it comes to the other article, right, Article 1, Section 9, within that they talk about suspending habeas corpus. You cannot suspend habeas corpus except for in the event of an invasion, except for in the event of major fraud, and that was one of the things that was being justified and being murmured about. And my entire point was, this is an extreme stance. That's extremely off out of bounds. To advocate for that, whether the actual constitutionality of that, I think is still in a gray area. I applaud James for bringing up that topic, but I think that it certainly is going above and beyond in order to punch back against the Democrats, punch back against the liberals. And I think that there's certainly a more civil way of handling this, and in a way that shows that the Republicans are not here just to win, because I think just winning to win is not necessarily the best thing. I think winning the hearts and minds of the people is certainly the better aspect. Because if both sides are degrading themselves, and I honestly think that performing that action would be a degradation of not only the Republican Party but also of the country, to take such extreme stances and extreme measures in order to protect the majority. But it would be a degradation of the country entirely, and it would make a precedent in which understanding. Right. Let's flash back a little ways to when the Democrats were last in power, and they had removed a precedent within the Senate that it took 60 votes in order to pass the Supreme Court justice. And Mitch McConnell said, "Look, if you do this, if you destroy this precedent and make it a simple majority, 51 votes is all that's required in order to appoint." Or, sorry, not to appoint, but to nominate a Supreme Court justice. This will blow back on you. This will have catastrophic effects in which you will not like. It will come. It may not come tomorrow, it may not come next week, but it will come and it will hurt. It will severely hurt you, and these are things that you do not want. And so taking that and going with this line of logic that was provided, right? Why would this also not be the same thing, right? Why would this not be in the same realm, right? Thank you so much, Irish, for the super hearts. I appreciate it. Hey, I got my pages back. So we are solid right now. So perfect. So I think on those grounds, right, it's very important that we, just because you want to win doesn't mean you find any way and every way possible in order to win. Because you're putting yourself in a severely susceptible position, because the Republicans, as much as Republicans and as much as people who hate the Democratic Party want the Republicans to never lose power to the Democrats, eventually history will occur. Eventually history will repeat itself, and eventually Democrats will take the House, they will take the Senate, and they will take the presidency. That is, unless the Democratic Party can figure out a way to crumble under itself, under its own fraud, waste, and abuse, then we will absolutely 100% see this fail, or we will see them come back into power, and it's going to be a huge shift in everything. So, I want you guys to look at the actions in which you're endorsing or advocating for, and think, if I'm doing something out of the norm, is this going to be something that you would find tolerable being used against you in some way? And I want you to understand that just because you are a good person within your party does not mean that everybody within your party are good people, right? Me as a libertarian, I know there's a lot of egregious people within the Libertarian Party. I know that there's white supremacists within the Libertarian Party. I know that there's anti-Semites within the Libertarian Party. I know that there are black supremacists within the Libertarian Party. I know that there are people that want to legalize pedophilia within the Libertarian Party. And so I'm not willing to break precedent. I'm not willing to set new precedents or find loopholes within the system in order to attack against those I disagree with. And I'm certainly going to advocate for a just system. Now, of course, when it comes to these elections, when it comes to the undermining of our election process and the integrity of our country, right, there should be ramifications. And there are some ramifications already coming out. There was one individual that is serving 120 days for advocating for or helping support illegals to vote, helping support people to vote multiple times. So he's serving a little bit of time. I think it certainly should be a lot more than that. But there are ramifications coming, and we just have to be patient. We have to be patient. That's what's important. And we have to advocate for a just system, not just a system that we just want because we don't like people. But it is what it is. So while all of this election malfeasance, I totally just butchered that word, while the egregious things that are happening during this election process are going on, while we are seeing the sheer destruction of our process, there's some things that the media has been missing out on, and a lot of people, and some older news that people are finally waking up to. And the news that we covered last week, we covered about the red flag situation, the gun confiscation there in Maryland, and now finally people are breaking out with it, and they're coming out and talking about it. I'm glad that people are talking about it, because obviously the red flag laws are egregious and destructive to not only the Second Amendment but the Fourth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, and it removes people's ability to practice their natural rights without, like I said, the Sixth Amendment, without due process. And so it's a good thing that was being brought up. That man, Willis, was killed. 61-year-old man Willis was killed while the police were attempting to confiscate his gun. I'm glad that they're talking about that. But what the media is missing right now is the fact that Democrats are coming out and they're pushing bills in order to ban guns. They're pushing to ban different ways in which people have obtained weapons, as well as trying to ban part kits. So the bill is H.R. 7115, and this legislation is sponsored by Representative Frank Pallone, a Democrat from New Jersey, and has 16 Democrat co-sponsors. The text of the bill says to prohibit the sale, acquisition, distribution, in commerce, or import into the United States of certain firearm receiver castings or blanks, assault weapon parts, and machine gun part kits, in the marketing or advertising of such castings or blanks and kits on any medium of electronic communications to require homemade firearms to have serial numbers and for other purposes. So let's break this down. Let's break this down because this is important. When it comes to certain firearm receiver castings or blanks, right? That gets into like a weird point, right? So what are those specific ones? And going into the legislation, going even further into this statement here, right? Assault weapons. What is an assault weapon? Can anyone provide me with a succinct definition of what an assault weapon is? Now, if we break down the term, of course, this is what a lot of gun advocates do, is they break down the terms. Assault, a verb. It's when you hit somebody, when you assault somebody, of course, assault means assault. When you hit somebody, when you are harassing somebody, even that is, under legal terms, that is assault. And then weapon. Everything is a weapon. This piece of my mug right here that broke off, I can use this as a weapon. So anything that you can use against somebody and that can be used as a weapon would then be classified as an assault weapon under a literal definition of breaking apart the terms. Now, what other people have used as assault weapons are firearms that are used in the event of assault. So that would literally be every kind of weapon in the United States. For people who want to give you a more narrow definition of this term, of the term assault weapon, they may be talking about a semi-automatic rifle, which may have a pistol grip, may have a flash suppressor. It may have I'm trying to remember the term. It goes over the barrel, and it is a way for it to distribute out the heat away from the gun, and so there's so many different definitions within this, and for them to attempt to pass legislation on this on such a vague term is certainly something that is undermining not only, of course, to the Second Amendment, but also undermining to the idea of what legality means, of what laws mean, what words mean. It's just truly disgusting, and it's truly reprehensible that members of Congress are standing there and they swore an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and then they're also advocating to take away from it. Here's a little known fact. A well-known fact by all who have read the Constitution from front to back, or all who have listened to probably even as low as an hour of listening to constitutional discussions. And that is the Supremacy Clause, right? Article 6, Clause 2. And that is that the Constitution and the laws and the pursuance thereof are the supreme law of the land. So when you have an amendment in the Constitution, such as the Second Amendment, that is the supreme law of the land. If there are laws that are in pursuance of protecting the Second Amendment, those are also supreme law of the land. But when you have a law that goes against the Second Amendment, that goes against the intent or the tenor of that amendment, those should automatically be struck down. This has been a huge failure on our system, but these members of Congress are actively advocating against the Constitution, and not even in a constitutional way. If you would like to advocate against the Constitution, using the Constitution, how do you advocate against the Constitution? You advocate for amendments to the Constitution. But of course, what members of Congress are doing, hey James, welcome in, man. What members of Congress are doing, and here's James. James, I hope that you'll go back. I did talk about, I spoke, oh, James is gone already. Going through the Constitution, what they do is they welcome back, James. Let me just give this quick message out to James. If you guys have not followed James, James is finally here. Yes, James, I spoke a little bit about our discussion earlier because I did receive some friendly fire, and so I wanted to give the entire discussion there of the basis behind Article 1, Section 5, as well as Article 1, Section 9. And I didn't even finish the thought, really. So I appreciate you for coming in for that. So to finish out that thought, a lot of people said, by me not wanting to take the extreme stance, that I was just accepting of the evils and the atrocities of the left. No, I wanted to be civil. I wanted to be to use the system and not create new precedents in order to just hit the left or just to destroy Democrats, right? I think that we have a system, and we certainly have civility in this country still with some people, and we can get rid of that. So back to the Second Amendment, back to the attempts of the Democrats to undermine our Constitution. So they can come together and they can propose amendments to the Constitution. They can propose an amendment to even the Second Amendment and say, look, we want to take away shall not be infringed. We want to take that away. If they can get, if the Democrats can get 60%, 60% of the states to buy into that, then we can have a discussion about gun control. But until that moment when this amendment is actually passed, any time that anyone discusses the idea of gun control or endorses this idea, what they are doing is they are openly advocating that they are both illiterate and they are being immoral in the ways that they're complicit with not upholding their own oath. So these people are proven that they do not care about their own word. And so the idea that you're going to buy into their ideas, you're going to buy into their motives, right? It makes people just as bad. It makes their voting base just as bad, right? I understand the idea that a lot of people have complete hate towards the Constitution. And so they want to work around the Constitution. Well, here's some news. Here's some big news that just came out in the last 2 years. 5-4. 5-4 for a mostly, I would say, a strong 80% constitutional original intent Supreme Court bench. As these challenges, as laws are attempting to be enacted, what we should be seeing, what we should all be hoping to see, is that all of these bills, all of these attempts at undermining our Constitution are brought up to the Supreme Court. New precedents are set to where the original intent of the amendments that are in the Constitution shall be adhered to, right? Oftentimes I get people asking me, what would be the amendment that you would want to add, Jason? Jason Lyon, you, sir, you love the Constitution. What would you add to it? And it would be just what I was talking about, that the original intent of the Constitution and the amendments to it shall be adhered to. Those are the precedents that are important, not the decisions made by the Supreme Court. Why is that? Why do I think that? Because when you have a Supreme Court that is filled with activist judges, like what we've seen for the last 70 years, when we have a Supreme Court that decides they don't like the Second Amendment, and so they make decisions like DC versus Heller, and they actually infringe upon the Second Amendment. You are literally allowing the Constitution to be undermined by a branch of the constitutional republic in which we have, right? We're only as strong as the people that are in it. And when it comes to the undermining of even the constitutional process, right, we've lost that. So, and I know James has wonderful discussions. I think I've heard you referenced the 17th Amendment a couple times. In the 17th Amendment, the basis behind this was to remove the state's representatives. To remove the state's representatives and move the Senate to being a populist representative. So now the people of your states vote for them instead of the state representatives themselves. And so when the states lose their representation, the government grew, the federal government grew, the states lost its abilities, lost its rights, lost its voice. And then we had more Supreme Court justices come in, and those Supreme Court justices started undermining the Constitution, started undermining, creating all these precedents that a lot of people hate and detest, such as Roe versus Wade. A lot of decisions that were made not even on the basis of the Constitution itself. Just pulling things out of the ether effectively in order to will the opinion in the way that they want to. And so we, the people, need to have this amendment in which the original intent of the Constitution is the important thing, right? When it comes to the 14th Amendment, right? The birthright. discussion. That's been a big one, right? The original writer and the original senator who brought this to the Senate floor, they both had the ideology that birthright is not based on the grounds in which you were born, right? This didn't give birthrights. So if you were an ambassador to another country, if you were an illegal immigrant or somebody who was not welcome here in the country and you were born in this country, that child would be a citizen of where the parents were from. So wherever they were a citizen, the child would be a citizen in the same way, to the same effect. So having that amendment would be able to clear up a lot of this process. It would make this a much cleaner process. It would make it to where we would understand laws instead of allowing people to interpret it in different ways, such as, I don't know, shall not be infringed, being interpreted as we can infringe upon it as we see fit. But it would clean up this entire process for us in a major way, and it would shut down the Democrats from pushing this gun control, removing or attempting to remove the citizens of America their natural right to be able to defend themselves with weapons of opportunity. And what we've seen recently is a lot of people from these horrific killings, whether it's the synagogue there in Pennsylvania, the Tree of Life, or if it was the shooting just recently at that bar in California. We've seen people advocate and say, look, let's just get rid of all guns. The problem is that we live in 2018. The ability for people to obtain weapons is not just through the market. People are able to build their own. So are we going to remove the ability for people to have 3D printers because you're able to make it there? Are we going to remove the ability for people to have lathes because you can make weapons there? Are we going to remove the ability for people to manufacture weapons and just by doing so remove the ability for the economy to survive or for individuals to own machinery? That sounds an awful lot like, I don't know, maybe they're endorsing a form of socialism or communism where the government controls the means of production. I don't know. It is what it is. So there is no way for gun control to actually work in the way that of banning all weapons. It will not work. It cannot work. In situations like what we had in Maryland with the red flag, that's going to happen more often. More people are going to die, whether it is the officers or the citizens who are having their natural rights removed without due process. This is going to occur, and it's disgusting. And everybody who's been advocating for red flags, every member who signs in favor of these laws, those are the ones that are complacent with this, and those are the ones that have the blood on their hands. Let's be honest. If you are going to sign away the ability for people to defend themselves, and they defend their rights, their liberties, their pursuit of happiness against the state, then it is those in the state who sign it. Those are the ones that have the blood on their hands. I'm sorry for it to be seem like a hyperbolic statement, but it is absolutely true. It is 100% true. When your actions directly lead to another person having to fight for their life, their liberty, and their pursuit of happiness without due process, you are in the wrong. It's disgusting. So the Democrats now, they've been vocal, and the media has been missing this. They've been pushing this bill, right? HR 7115. They're pushing different bills right now and trying to get the gun control because they have the House, and they think if they have the House, they can push these bills, and then they can point at Republicans in the Senate and say it didn't pass because of Republicans. Sorry that Republicans care about natural rights with regards to guns in a much more realistic manner. I'm sorry that that's the way it goes. I'm sorry, Democrats. They're a little bit more in touch with it when it comes to what a positive right and a negative right is. And they stand much more in favor of the negative rights than Democrats. And Democrats think that positive rights are a thing. I'm sorry. Maybe the country does need to have a little bit of a discussion on the difference between negative rights and positive rights. I think we should have that discussion probably Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. So if you guys want to tune in then, please do. I would appreciate it. And I will break it all down for you guys. I will break down exactly what they are and give a litany of examples of each to give a clear message to all. I think it'll be a great learning experience for everyone. So So we talked about the Democrats. We talked about the media being complacent, the media pushing disgusting narratives as they always do, of not actually being objective, of pushing their narratives. And while we're talking about this, let's go back to the Jim Acosta situation. Jim Acosta is just a joke, but it's come out and it's been clear that Jim Acosta is not actually banned from the White House. He's not actually banned from the press pool. He had his hard pass revoked, and the result of that is Jim Acosta can go through the normal process in which most other journalists have to go through in order to go be a part of the press pool. But Jim Acosta's got to Jim Acosta, bros. He's got to Jim Acosta it up. He's got to make it worse than what it is in order to play the victim. It's amazing that Jim Acosta is able to take any and every situation in order to spin it up that he's the victim. It's beautiful. I love it. But the lawsuit that's coming from CNN, I heard reports. I haven't verified this yet, but they were using one of the GIFs of Trump attacking CNN on the football field as a piece of evidence. And I hope that that's true. I hope that that's true, because I would love to see the judge's face when they're like, you put a GIF of a football player and another football player, and it's got Trump's head and it's got CNN's head, and Trump knocks out CNN, and you think this is evidence? You think that this right here is evidence for anything other than an indication of what of how much better the right can meme than the left? Like, this is all that is being displayed right now. I'm sorry that you're on the losing end of this, CNN. You're on the losing end of a lot of things. It happens. I'm sorry. You got to get over it. Pull your panties up. And how about you get a little objective with your news? How about you drop the narrative a little bit? How about you drop your agenda a little bit? How about you actually focus on being an apple instead of being the banana all the time? But it is what it is. CNN's a joke. So we should continue on. So looking at this entire situation right now, what we're seeing with this entire country is we're actually seeing hate crimes go up. This is something that a lot of people don't want to agree with. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge it. And I think that this is truly an indicator of how much more divided our country has become. We've covered quite a few hate crimes that are going. I've been discussing a lot of hate crimes on this show, and we've discussed the ones where there was an Air Force base in which somebody was writing hateful things, where they were writing hate speech against black people all over the rooms and all over the halls around a specific airman. And it later came out that the airman himself that was the victim was also the aggressor in this situation. He was the one performing the graffiti. But I think that those are certainly exceptions to the rule. But the hate crimes are up. And so I think that we can take not just the politics, the division within politics. I think that if we can find a way in order to unite when it comes to politics, find somebody that's on the left that you can actually talk to, that is willing to have positive discourse with you, that is willing to dissent from you, but portray it in a positive way. Find them, talk with them, and have every discussion possible with them. Grow the unity by example. Because when we do that on one front, and you have people that maybe are not involved with politics, but they're able to do it on other fronts, right? We have to start somewhere, and we have to do it on the individual level. You have to do it for yourself, and you have to do it for that random lefty that's on your Facebook feed, that's on your Twitter feed, and just find somebody and try to make that growth, try to make that unity. And this may be my libertarian side coming out, of course, but find that and try to see if you can make a change in one person's life. Try to make a change in one person's life this week. If you can do it in 1 week, if you can do one person in 1 week, try it in 4 days next week. Try it in 3 days. Try it in 2 days. And eventually you'll get to where you want to do this every day. Every day you can try to make a change in someone else's life. I have been getting into a little bit of a personal side of my life. I struggled with PTSD. I was extremely suicidal for going on 8 years, right? November 2nd, 2011, my ex-wife tried to kill me. And I have suffered from that. I still suffer from that. But the way that I got out of this was not by feeling pity for myself, not for blaming myself, but by being a better person, by coming out and helping out in some way, whether it's donating to somebody that's homeless that maybe I don't think that they may not be homeless, but I give them some water on a hot summer day. I give them a sandwich. I give them something small. That makes me a little bit of a better person. I helped out somebody else. They can see me in a positive light, whether they're a corrupt person or a good person that's in need. I did something good. That made me feel better. That made the world a little bit of a better place. When I go on to online discussions and I'm seeing people with such vitriol, such visceral hatred for people who are pro-capitalism, for pro-liberty, pro-freedom, pro-right-wing, whatever it is, when they have such visceral hatred and we can talk them down and we can maybe, just maybe, give them a positive glimmer of what's on the other side, you can make that change. This is something that I've been working on. You guys have seen it on the show. I continually do this with people that are on the left that come in here. I accept your dissent. I want your dissent. I want to have discussions and I want to keep growing. That's the only way that we can. And I'm making the world a better place in such a small aspect that if I get one more person, James is a great guy. I know that James can talk to people that are on the left. I know that he can do that. I know that he can give people the truth. Sometimes he's got to beat it into them a little bit, but he can make a positive change in someone's life. And so if I can inspire James to do that, and James can inspire 1,500 people because he's got such a large audience and he's such a fantastic man. If he's able to do that, right, and he inspires more people, we can make a positive change in this country. And your side, your political side will look better for it. Your party will look better for it. People who hold the same ideology as you will get a better look for it. You're only helping your own optic. And so I think in a country right now that is so vastly divided, just absolutely filled with visceral hatred to the eyeballs, this is what we need. This is exactly what we need. Make the change and grow. Make the change and help grow this world. It needs to happen. Whether if you're religious and you want to spread the good word of God, spread the good word of God. If you are not religious, spread the good word of humanity. Spread the love, not the hate. When you see hate, fight it with love. Don't fight hate with hate, because you're only going to create hate out of this, right? If you fight terror with terror, you only create terror. If you fight hate with hate, you only create hate. Whatever negative thing that you fight with more negative, you can't get more positive out of it. You will not get more positive out of it. Be the pinnacle of positivity in this world. It needs to be addressed. It needs to be fought, and it can be fought with you, the individual, and that's the way we should be looking at this. Don't treat them as everyone else on the left when you're dealing with someone on the left. Treat them as an individual. Have a discussion with them. Don't have a debate. Have a discussion, and preach your truth. Preach your truth, right? I know this is an Oprah Winfrey line. I know that this is a line on the left. Preach your truth, but talk about don't just talk about the facts. Talk about why those facts are so important. Talk about why that line of reasoning is better, not only in the short term, but in the long term. Saying someone else is full of hatred sounds a lot like projection. So let me address that. Yes, that does sound like a lot like projection. There are a lot of people, regardless of side, that are filled with visceral hatred. Right? Libertarian Party, right? Right now, the core of the Libertarian Party has a visceral hatred against the Libertarian Socialists within the Libertarian Party. Visceral hatred. I've worked to try to amend that. I've been filled with visceral hatred towards communists in the past. I have grown past that. I've accepted. I was daily tweeting with an actual communist in order to not only hopefully change their mind, but also make myself be a better person. So it may seem like projection, but I promise you it's my view. It's my view of everything that's going on in this country. The challenge would be to turn on the news and figure out, count for 1 hour, count how many stories are a positive story and how many stories are a negative story. Go scroll through your Facebook feed. Find out how many posts are positive and how many are negative, right? We are living in a world, in a society that is extremely negative in just every step of the way. And it doesn't it doesn't have to be that way. We can be positive. We can make a positive change, and that will influence others to come to our side. That's going to be the important thing. Preachers rarely listen. That is, yes, preachers rarely listen. That is truth. I appreciate you coming in, Dennis. I know that we do disagree. See, Dennis is one of those great guys. I'm going to take a second. I want to say thank you to Dennis. Dennis is left of center, but he comes in. He has great discussions. He dissents, and we have good discussions. We have good rhetoric between the two of us, and we challenge each other, and it's beautiful. Do you run into many liberals full of hatred? No, I run into a lot of progressives full of hatred. I run into a lot of socialists, communists, Nazis, white supremacists, black supremacists. These are people that are for the most part, filled with a lot of hatred for people who disagree, who dissent with them. Because those are the ones that are usually being filled. I mean, even I know a lot of Republicans and Democrats, right, that are filled with the same thing. It is what it is, and we can be better. We can grow this country together, and we can unite again. That's all that I'm preaching for. And yes, I'm preaching, which means I'm not listening. We can stop with the preaching. We can slow down, and we can have discussions. That's much more important. So thank you for making that point, Dennis. It is what it is. So that's my big calling to you guys. And I realize like the show is going to be really short tonight. I'm far left of center, but I try to be nice. Thank you. I realize tonight's show is really short, but it is. I've got a lot of things going on right now in my life, and my wife has asked that I take a little bit of a short time. So don't give the Mrs. Beard any guff about it. It is what it is. But I want to say thank you, guys. I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for whether you agree or disagree, for coming in here and having this discussion. You guys are all amazing people. Be the positive influence around you. Grow and seek out the truth. And don't try to seek out the truth of your bias. Try to seek out the truth of what you say. Do some research on your views. Do some research on challenging your views. And we will all be better from that. We will all be better. Because when you grow your arguments, when your arguments get to the next level, when they get to the higher echelon of quality, right? You're not only helping provide clarity to others that are viewing it, you're not only helping influence others to your side, but you're also helping grow the ability for people to have rational discussions again. It's one of the things unbecoming of the country, and it has certainly led to people wanting to undermine the First Amendment. So thank you all for joining in tonight. I appreciate you all for all the likes, the retweets, the shares. The support has been tremendous. I thank you all. And I will be seeing you guys again. What is today? Today is Tuesday, which means the next show will be on Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. We will either do the natural... Do you guys just want to have the discussion now? Here, give me a 1 if you guys want to have a discussion on what a positive versus a negative right is, and give me a 2 if you guys just want to have this on Tuesday. Or, sorry, not Tuesday, on Friday. So, a 1 for Tuesday night discussion or for a discussion tonight, positive rights versus negative rights. A 2 for Friday. I can squeeze out a couple more minutes if you guys would like. Are you a Proud Boy? No, I'm not a Proud Boy. Proud Boys are people that are maybe not alt-right, but they are certainly kind of in an area in which it's borderline morally unconscionable. Okay? Because if you advocate for violence, even if you go and you seek violence to use violence against them, right? There is a moral conundrum there. All right, so we got a couple ones. All right, so let's do this. Let's do a big old discussion about what a positive right and what a negative right is. So first, we have to understand what is a right. A right is something that is bestowed upon a person from their creator. This is not inherently a religious or a religious idea. So if you're a religious person, if you believe in God or gods, the gods that created you give you life as well as these rights. If you are a-religious, then your creators, i.e. your parents, created you, and by you having life, inherently comes natural rights. Now, these rights are independent of everybody else. Okay? So, what is a right? How does it work? How does it function? There's two different types of rights when it comes to the philosophical side of this. So there's a positive right and a negative right. A negative right is something that it takes actions from another in order to impede or stop you from being able to practice or utilize. A positive right means that it's relying upon somebody else to provide you with said right. An example of what a negative right is. A negative right would be to use the Constitution and to use one of the amendments of the Constitution would be the First Amendment. The First Amendment protects your right from the federal government, the right to freedom of speech, to practice your religion, the freedom of the press, the right to redress your grievances, okay? And the right to assemble. So your First Amendment, let's just go specifically into the freedom of speech. If I want to speak, I am able to speak because that is my negative right. It takes nobody else's action in order for me to be able to speak. It takes somebody's actions to stop me from being able to speak. So it's negative in the way that it takes nothing from anybody else. An example of a positive right would be even something that within our constitutional republic that we have, you hear this whenever you're being arrested by an officer. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be appointed to you. Okay? So that means that somebody has to go to school to become an attorney. Once they are an attorney, by this right, which is more of a privilege, by this right, that person's actions are now owed to you because of the system in which we live. So a positive right is something that can only exist in a society in which it has been accepted and there is somebody there capable of providing it to you. One big push that is going on right now across this country is the idea that healthcare is a right. Okay? Healthcare cannot be a right. Healthcare is the service of having medical practices being performed on you, which means it requires somebody to go to school. That person goes and gets their licensing degree or their licensing through the government, and then they can perform these actions on you. And if you make that a right, then it's owed to you. It is required to be provided to you. So it can't be a right in that aspect. But many people want it to be. Where would the right be within this? What is the negative right when it comes to healthcare? The negative right when it comes to healthcare is the right of the people to pursue healthcare, the right of the people to advocate for a healthcare process, for the healthcare process. So if I get injured, right, in a negative right way, no one can stop me from going to see a doctor. It would take somebody's actions to prevent me from going to see a doctor, right? They would have to stop my car. They would have to hold me down, prevent me in any way of going and tending to my wounds via a doctor. In a positive right way, this would be that I go and I find somebody on the street and I say, you provide healthcare to my leg. I tripped, I busted open my kneecap, you go get a Band-Aid, apply the Band-Aid to my knee. That would be a form of a positive right within the healthcare. So looking at those two, yes, I did portray these in a little bit more of an extreme way, but this is, it's clear cut in the way that I projected this out, right? A positive right requires the action of another. A negative right requires the actions of none. I get to practice them as I see fit. Just because you don't practice a right does not mean that you do not have the right, right? So another natural right would be the right of self-defense. If somebody wants to take your life, if somebody wants to do harm to you, if somebody wants to take your property, these are all things that are natural rights, right? The right of ownership, the right of property, the right of sovereignty. If somebody wants to go and infringe upon those rights, your negative rights, you have the negative right in order to defend yourself. It takes no one's actions for me to defend myself against an aggressor. So if I want to use a weapon, if I want to use a knife, if I want to use a sword, if I want to use a stick, if I want to use a vacuum cleaner, or if I want to use a firearm, these are all things that are within my capacity and thus within my rights to protect myself. This is something that the Second Amendment was supposed to protect us from, was the idea that we are the responsible party and we can protect ourselves with the way that we see fit. My right does not require somebody to provide me with a firearm. It does not require somebody to provide me with a weapon. It doesn't require somebody to provide me with training. It just requires that when I am in need, when I am being attacked, when I am being aggressed upon, that I am capable of defending myself. So the natural right of self-defense. Another natural right, the right of travel. Now here's where rights get a little bit conflicted. This is where rights get into a little bit of a conflict. And that is when you have the right of travel, that you have a natural right to be able to move with as you see fit. Okay? So that means if I want to go walk through the woods, I can walk through the woods. If I want to walk down the street, I can walk down the street. Here's where it conflicts with somebody else's right. The right of property, the right of ownership. Somebody owns this plot of land and they say, you can't come onto this property. I have the right to travel. They have a right to their land. Whose comes into importance there, right? If I use my freedom of travel, I can go around them. I can choose my path. I am free to walk onto their property, but they are then free to protect their property. So this becomes into the area of conflict in which consequences occur. So every action has a consequence. If I choose to walk around, that guy is happy, I'm happy, we're good to go. Let's step it up another level. Let's get into a little bit more of a conflicting area on this. Said person with property says, hey, it looks like it would be a shorter path of travel. Do you want to cross past my property? You can cross past it and get to your destination quicker. I am able to use my natural right of free travel to walk through his property under his consent and go across. This occurs for a couple days, a couple weeks even, and I continually am walking past. One day I kick a shrub, I kick a plant, I kick his dog, and he says, you can no longer walk across my property. Do I still have the ability to walk across his property? Yes, right? It takes his action to prevent me from walking across his property. But now I'm aggressing. I'm not just walking through his property. I'm actually aggressing against his property. So I was granted privilege to go across his property. I was using my right and the privilege that he gave me over his and through his property. When he revokes his privilege, that's when the rights really become into conflict. And so we have to understand that negative rights are something that requires no one else's actions but your own, and a positive right requires the action of somebody else. It requires that. So we have to understand these two terms are very, very different. And oftentimes you will see people in political discussions trying to conflate the two in order to get their personal agenda or their personal views not only heard, but accepted as some form of law, of some form of accepted opinion. And so I don't want you guys just to take this discussion and think that that's the end of this. There's so many more ideas that come when it comes to natural laws or natural rights and how rights are infringed upon. And as a libertarian, right, this is one of the core values of what brought me to becoming a libertarian, right? This is why I'm a First Amendment absolutist, why I'm a Second Amendment absolutist, why I'm a Fourth Amendment absolutist, why I am a Fifth Amendment, a Sixth Amendment. Most of the amendments, most of the 10 original amendments are amendments in which I agree absolutely with. That I am a sovereign person, that you don't take my rights unless I'm proven to have violated the rights of another, unless I have made a criminal of another person. Or not a criminal of another person. I have made a victim of another person by my actions. So if I'm not aggressing against somebody else, you don't get to take my rights. You don't get to take away my freedoms. And so I have the right to speak. I have the right to defend myself. I have the right to own my property and not allow the military or the police to stay in my place. I have the right to privacy. I have the right to remain silent. I can speak or I can be silent. I have the right to due process, right? That's your first 6 amendments right there. And I don't think that these are necessarily controversial in any way, but we've allowed the discussions of people to pull the wool over our eyes and change what the words mean in order to say, you shouldn't be able to do this because others have done this in a poor way, because others have hurt each other because of using the Second Amendment, or they've hurt people's feelings using their First Amendment. I am not guilty for their actions. They're not guilty for mine. Leave my natural rights alone. Leave my negative rights alone. And if you're going to afford others with a positive right, then I'm afforded those as well within the society. I can disagree. I don't necessarily think that everyone should have the right to an attorney. I think that we should be going back to the basis behind what the founders had, and that was basic, simple language in order to ensure that laws are easy to understand. Read the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. Tell me they're not simply laid out for the common man to understand. Read amendments 11 through 20. Tell me how many of those you had to go look up terms. If we can simplify the process, if we can simplify the system, we don't require the actions of another in order to protect ourselves, nor our rights. And those are all our natural negative rights. So with that, guys, I want to thank you all for joining in. I hope you guys enjoyed that last little bit. I hope you learned something, and maybe it popped a couple questions in your head about natural rights, about negative rights or positive rights. And I hope that you guys will take this information and go and do great things with it. Go learn more and go and share the knowledge. These are all ideas that we should understand as Americans. Really the only country ever to be formed on the idea of liberty. The idea of being free. And so take this and share it. Share it out. Let people know that you advocate for freedom. You advocate for negative rights, and you don't require the actions of others via positive rights. You will not make rights positive because those don't exist. Those don't exist in the real world, and they should not exist here in America. No one should be forced into slavery. No one. No one should be forced to provide a service for a transaction in which they do not consent to, because they own themselves, they are sovereign people, and they're free people. Let them be free, let yourself be free, and fight for liberty, fight for freedom, and continue on being beautiful, amazing patriots and fighting for the good in all. So thank you all. I appreciate you all, every single one of you. Thank you all for your likes, for your retweets, for your shares. I will see you guys Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, here on YouTube as well as on Periscope. Thank you all. Have a great night, and I will see you guys Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. I am Mr. America, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon. Thank you.